Debate now over whether American automakers should receive another $25 billion in bailout heated up today as the top executives from the big three testified in Congress after flying in yesterday on their private luxury jets at the cost of $20K per jet. And all three jets, by the way, traveled separately. Here's what New York Congressman Gary Ackerman, this guy is a real piece of work. I love Gary Ackerman. Here's what he said to these guys when they showed up.
There's a delicious irony in seeing private luxury jets flying in to Washington, D.C., and people coming off of them with tin cups in their hand, saying that they're going to be trimming down and streamlining their businesses. It's almost like seeing a guy show up at the soup kitchen in high hat and tuxedo.
It's like having a guy show up in the soup kitchen in high hat and tuxedo. Well, that's a big question. Does the American auto industry deserve the bailout? And are these three jokers doing the job of getting them one? Let's bring in Democratic Congressman Stephen Israel of New York State and Republican Congressman Zach Wamp of Tennessee. Gentlemen, thank God you're close together. I guess we only had one camera to work. That's part of our cost savings. Let me start with you, Mr. Israel. Congressman, if you want to bail them out, is there a limit to how far you'll go? 25, call you 25, 50, go 50. Where we go into 100? If they don't pay the bridge loan, do we keep giving them more money? What's the story?
Well, I don't want to give them a penny unless the American people get something in return. I don't want to give them a bailout. They need a jump start. I don't want to give them a blank check. What they need is to jumpstart the economy. They need to reverse fundamentally bad management decisions by these CEOs who just flew in. They spent the past 30 years building the wrong cars for the wrong people at the wrong time. I'm willing to give them some help, but here's what I want in return. I want a commitment from them that they're going to start installing flex fuel chips in cars so that we don't have to depend on oil to get us around. I want a commitment that they're going to advance research on new batteries. I want a commitment that they're going to turn over their current fleet and replace it with new energy-efficient vehicles. And until we get those kinds of commitments, I'm not interested in giving them a bailout.
Well, H.L. Mencken once said, never argue with someone whose job depends on not being convinced. You're talking to CEOs who don't want to hear that they've blown it. Now, here's what George Will, a free marketeer, had to say today. He's quoting the chief flack for General Motors, the chief press guy. This is what he put out as a statement. It's an incredible statement. This is GM talking. Nothing has changed relative to the GM board's support for the GM management team during this historically difficult economic period for the U.S. auto industry. And then George Will goes on to say nothing, not even the evaporation of almost all shareholder value. They're standing up for the quality of management. They're saying everything is going swimmingly, Congressman. It doesn't sound like they're willing to buckle to your call for greater management control.
Well, when we have the funding that they're asking for, they can't expect us to just give them a blank check without the kinds of conditions we want. Look, there have been two failures of management here. There's been a failure of management in Detroit, and there's been a failure of management in Washington with administration policies that did nothing. And the victim should not be the auto worker in Rochester or Buffalo or the service guy in a car dealership on Long Island.
Okay, stay there for a minute because I'll come back to you with a question, which is if they fail to pay this money back, if they blow it again, will you do it again and give them more money next year like an enabler? Let me go to Congressman Wamp here. If you're a free marketeer, sir, and you oppose the bailout, how many jobs are you willing to see lost in the interest of free market principle?
Well, first of all, I don't think they're going to go out of business without the money. I think they'll probably go into Chapter 11. And as Mitt Romney says in an editorial today, that's actually where you reorganize. That's where you rework your labor agreements. That's where you come and cut money. That's where you get the management off their tail to make these changes. The American people don't believe that we'll be able to hold them accountable because over the last 2 months since the last bailout, they've seen that managed so poorly that it rivals the management of our response to Katrina. So the government confidence is not there with the people. They are weary of bailouts, any more bailouts, any new money. They don't believe it's going to work because this administration came and told us that the last bailout was necessary, and it's 60 days later and only a portion of the money has even got into the credit market. So we don't have a good track record. Steve is right that there's two failures here, but giving them more money is a bad idea, and that will have a counter economic stimulus effect by putting more government money out there with no guarantee the changes are going to follow. And as Thomas Friedman says, why reward the guys who have been brain dead on what they need to do for a long, long time? This is
so you're willing to
asinine.
take the risk of bankruptcy because
they'll end
the
up
CEO
in Chapter
of GM,
11. They'll come out of it if
you're
they're
willing
any
to take
good.
that risk.
If they're any good, they'll come out of it. People go into Chapter 11 and out of Chapter 11 in this country all the time. That's what it's created for. I'm not saying
they're
Chapter
not any
7.
good.
Well, if they're not any good, then competition is going to bring the best cars to the market. Volkswagen just invested in Tennessee in a right-to-work state at a low cost with less health care. Why should we prop others up when other companies can compete in this marketplace?
Well, that's the question to you, Congressman Israel. Should the auto industry, including its labor that builds these cars, should they agree to work for the same amount of money workers work for in right-to-work states where they don't have unions? Look, or is that just too hard a price, too high a price to pay to get the bailout?
In any scenario, there's going to have to be sacrifices by everybody, by labor, by management, by everybody. But let me just say one thing on the bankruptcy issue, and this is important. The auto industry isn't like other industries. If the auto industry goes bankrupt, are you willing to buy an American car not knowing whether you're going to be able to get a fan belt for that car in 2 years, a replacement part, whether the warranty is going to be protected? When an airline industry goes bankrupt, people still buy tickets on those airlines. When the auto industry goes bankrupt, there are no options. And that's why I'm not saying bail them out by any stretch of the imagination. I'm saying give them a jump start, require that they begin making the technological transformation that Iran is making by installing flex fuel chips, that Brazil is making, that we should make.
Gentlemen, here's what I'm worried about. The total economic impact of a major bankruptcy in one of our major firms at this point. The stock market today dropped dramatically below 8,000. It's at a 5.5-year low. The impact on national morale of the failure of the big three or one of the big three, it seems to me, could be shattering. For Americans not to know we're making our own cars anymore might make us start putting our money in our piggy banks and taking it out of the stock market and taking it out of any risky investment. Aren't you afraid of that, sir? You first, Mr. Wamp. Could it be that Americans are right on the edge now of a fearful race from risk? And they'll be even more fearful of risk if the auto industry fails.
At some point, we're going to hit bottom, somewhere between here and next April, I hope. But back in September, we created all this fear. Paulson and the team, the administration, he's right about this. They made it worse by creating all the fear. Oh, my God, the sky is going to fall if we don't do this. The people that we represent don't believe this is going to happen. They believe they'll go into 11, come out of it. Who's going to guarantee the reforms? These guys need to be making cars that can compete with Toyota, not asking us to prop them up. And, Chris, at some point, they got to bite the bullet. And Thomas Friedman says it. Art Laffer says it. Mitt Romney says it. A lot of people from various perspectives are saying it's time to let these people learn the lesson the hard way.
I wonder if there isn't an intramural battle going on here between the unionized states and the right-to-work states that don't have unions. Could that be the battle here, Congressman Israel? Are you fighting for the rights of unions to collectively bargain, even if it means higher costs for labor?
I'm fighting for two things.
Against people who are trying to get cheaper labor down in the South, for example.
I am fighting for two things. We have a profound economic crisis in America, and we have a profound energy crisis in America. This is an opportunity for us to solve both problems by jump-starting the auto industry with new technologies, not to bail them out, but to jump-start them. That's what we've got to do.
I'm still trying to get the answer. How big a price are we willing to pay? How many unemployed are we willing to suffer if we don't pay the price? These are tough questions, and you guys in Congress and women in Congress are going to have to answer those questions. Thank you very much. Congressman Steve Israel of New York and Congressman Zach Wamp of Tennessee.